a mock interview session with real feedback with one of our interview prep advisors. Every year around the interview season, we record this video to show you excellent answers to common residency interview questions, and we give you comments about these so you know how to prep and ace your residency interviews. So before we get started, if you'd like to get more sample answers, written sample answers to residency interview questions, 200 plus interview questions that you will see on your residency interviews, interview prep guide, and multiple other resources, don't forget to sign up to the interview prep resources we will provide for you. You can access that by clicking the link in the description below. And now let's get started. Welcome, Adam, to the program. We're very excited to have you here.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I'm really glad to be here.
So I'm going to start by asking you a question you probably heard multiple times. Tell me a little bit about yourself.
Of course. Yeah, obviously. Happy to be here today. My name's Adam Watkins. I'm a fourth year med student at Geisinger Commonwealth School of Medicine in Scranton. I am originally, though, from South Florida. I grew up in Fort Lauderdale, spent my first 18 years there, and then did my undergrad at Florida State University in Tallahassee. So spent basically the first 22 years of my life living in Florida. Thought I was going to spend my whole life in Florida, but fortunately, when I got into med school, I got in Scranton, Pennsylvania, Geisinger, and so I moved across the country, and started med school there. Thought I wanted to do orthopedics, landed on anesthesia, and also fortunately with this move, I met my fiance in Scranton, and now we're doing the couples match together. But in addition to going throughout medical school, I also have found a passion for research, worked on a number of different research projects, as well as a passion for leadership. I've led a couple of different committees throughout medical school, as well as being student council president. And then also, I'd say probably one of my biggest passions is mentorship. I do a mentoring program for high school students in the area, as well as mentoring other medical students that are a couple of years behind me in training. So those are some of my biggest extracurricular passions. I would say outside of any of that, I'm a really big tennis and a really big soccer fan. I love playing tennis with my fiance, and I love watching soccer with my buddies. And I'm really, really passionate about anesthesiology. I've done a couple of sub internships in anesthesiology as well, and really just solidified that this is the specialty for me, which I'm happy to talk about later. And I'm really excited to be interviewing with you here today.
Amazing. What got you into anesthesia? What made you want to do this?
All right. So yeah, why anesthesiology? Obviously a great question, because I'm sure you looked at my CV and saw that there was a lot of orthopedics experiences on there. Came into med school thinking that I wanted to do orthopedic surgery, loved orthopedic surgery. I had a lot of pre-med school experiences in orthopedic surgery. And so I went all out doing all the orthopedics research, doing all the orthopedics mentorship. And even the few preclinical experiences I had with orthopedic surgery, while I loved it, there were some things that I felt were missing from the specialty. So I went into my clinical experiences with this little bit of a question of if it was really the best specialty for me. And so I started on internal medicine, and I loved it. And I found that there were a lot of things, a lot of intellectual curiosity that was in that specialty that I didn't necessarily find in orthopedic surgery. Which was confusing for me because obviously I loved that specialty so much up until this point. Subsequently went into my psychiatry rotation and loved that for a whole different set of reasons. I loved connecting with people, meeting them where they were, helping them through really challenging emotional situations. And again, loved a lot of things about it that weren't inherent to orthopedic surgery at that time. And then subsequently ended up on my surgery rotation where I found that I probably wasn't the best fit for surgery. And what I really loved was going on the other side of the curtain and talking to the anesthesiologist. I loved hearing about what was happening medically with the patient. I loved hearing all of the nuances of the anesthetic care. And none of that was what I found in orthopedic surgery. And so I ended up talking to an anesthesia mentor of mine who sent me an article that said, "Help wanted, looking for someone with the mind of an internist, the hands of a surgeon, and the heart of a psychiatrist." And so it was really the icing on the cake for me in terms of addressing all those things that I loved about those other specialties and tying them up in a nice bow with anesthesiology. And so obviously lots of reasons that I love the specialty, but if I could tell my story about how I landed on anesthesiology in a couple of minutes, that's what I'd say.
That's amazing. You had multiple options to apply to multiple programs. What made you really interested in our program?
Yeah, so obviously your program amazing program across the board, academically very strong, experience-wise very, very strong. I think that goes without saying. But I think what really stood out to me the most was when I did my away rotation at the program. Um, Sub-internships are very challenging. You're in a new city, you're working in a health system that you don't totally know, you're meeting lots of new people. And I had a couple of pretty tough days on rotation where I felt like I wasn't doing the best job. And I actually had a couple of residents pull me aside and really encourage me and help me find my feet again and get me going. And I think that those couple of experiences really opened my eyes to the culture of the program and showed me that I probably have a lot of success at this program with the level of support that they offer. In addition to obviously the strength of the program and what is without a question an amazing training culture, I also have family in the area. Actually, my fiance's family are from the area. And so I think having that logistical support system in the area will make what is obviously a very challenging residency training program a little bit more doable with that family support.
Amazing. No, obviously, we also have a lot of applicants that interview here each year. What would you say would set you apart from other applicants?
Yeah, great question. So obviously, I've had the pleasure of meeting a couple of the applicants here today, and I think obviously they're all very strong. I'm sure that they'd all be great additions to the program. And I think a lot of the strengths that I have, they probably share as well. Namely, I feel that I'm a particularly diligent person, and I think I bring an attitude of going above and beyond. I feel I've demonstrated this multiple times throughout my clinical training, just showing up early to rotations, staying late, looking for ways to help the team, even when they don't necessarily expect it. And I think that sort of attitude is really, really going to help me excel in your program. Additionally, something that's a little bit unique about me is that I'm actually the first person in medicine in my family. So none of my family members, no parents, no extended family work in the health field. And so navigating this whole medical journey, getting to even the point where I can apply to residency has been particularly challenging. And I feel that having that mentality, understanding how challenging navigating the health system can be, will make me a really, really strong patient advocate and will allow me to act as an advocate for my patients as well as advocate for other trainees in the program who might not have the guidance that they necessarily feel is best for them. In addition to everything that I just mentioned, I also think that that my clinical acumen will also make me a very strong addition to your program. Throughout all of my clinical rotations, I felt the diligence that I previously mentioned has allowed me to really, really grow procedure-wise and also intellectually as a clinician. And I think that will allow me to slot in very, very well into your program and allow me to kind of hit the ground running in terms of taking on the responsibilities of a new resident.
Amazing. Any weaknesses you would like to work on over the next few years, things to improve?
Yeah, so I think obviously residency is going to be a big challenge. I think that I anticipate I'm going to need to grow in a lot of different aspects, and I think that's a mentality that I'm going to bring. But if you made me pick one thing that I would narrow down to something that I really think I could work on, it would probably be patience with the process. I'm someone, and I think a lot of people in medicine are this way. I tend to be pretty hard on myself when I make mistakes or when I'm experiencing failure. I really, really like to be good at things. I think most people in medicine are that way. I think we like to be good at the things that we're doing. And throughout medical school, I mean, there have been instances where I felt like I wasn't good at things that I was doing the first couple of times that I tried, and I'd be very frustrated, very down on myself. I even had a couple of residents and attendings mention that, hey, Adam, you're being pretty hard on yourself. And I realized that, acting with some humility, acting with some forgiveness and some kindness towards myself is something that will make this whole medical training process a lot more bearable and a lot less emotionally challenging. And that's something that I've really tried to start doing throughout my fourth year of medical school, and something that I think will actually help me grow even better as a resident.
Where do you see yourself after your residency is done 5-10 years afterwards?
So obviously in anesthesiology, there are a number of different fellowships that are available. I think I'm pretty open to a lot of them. I'm going to try to go into residency with an open mind about all the different fellowship options. But if you made me pick one right now, I'd probably choose cardiac anesthesia. I think those cases are really intellectually stimulating, really technically challenging. I think the physiology is amazing. And if I had to choose a fellowship right now, that's probably what I choose to do. Obviously, like I mentioned, I'm going to go in with an open mind and see what speaks to me the best. But I think fellowship aside, I think mentorship and leadership are things that I really appreciate. And so I envision myself at least working at an academic center where there's trainees that I can help raise up the next generation of medical trainees. And I'd also love to get involved with leadership in a department as well. What that looks like now, it's kind of hard to say, but I think that working in some sort of leadership capacity in an academic center is something that I'll want to do as well.
Amazing. And that's kind of the type of applicants we want to train at our program, understanding that each program has a certain fit. We are a program that tries to attract applicants who want to train the next generation and make an impact on patients' lives outside just the clinical care. That brings me to my next question, which is, give me an example of a patient that impacted you, or a patient you remember left something positive on you.
Yeah, of course. I think like a lot of people in medicine, probably our most emotionally impactful patients probably come in the critical care setting. When I was on my ICU rotation as a fourth year med student, we had a woman who came in with some undifferentiated shock, and she had a pretty challenging neurological outcome. But what stood out to me more was not necessarily the medical complexity of the case, but more her family situation. I was really amazed to see how supportive her family was, but much like my family, no one in this patient's family had any sort of medical background, and so I found myself in a unique situation to be able to act as their surrogate with the medical team and help them understand what's happening. And I saw a lot of myself. I saw a lot of my family in this patient and her family, and I was really humbled with how much they trusted me with their care. And I think it opened my eyes to a very unique aspect of the role of a physician in not just being the one who, gives medications or does surgery or fixes things, but also the one who's there to hold the hands of patients and their families through arguably some of the most challenging moments of their life. And I think that it's something that in particular is very important for anesthesiologists who are working with patients that are about to undergo surgery and are oftentimes very scared about what's going to happen. And we have a couple of minutes to develop really deep trust with those patients. And so that experience, for multiple reasons, was particularly moving and transforming for me.
This is indeed a very impactful story. Now, do you have any example of a story where you had a misunderstanding with a team member, like another med student or resident or attending, and how did you handle that?
So certainly I can answer that. In my second year of medical school, I was working on a research project with a research fellow who's taking a research year in orthopedics research. And he asked me to help him with a project. And the initial agreement was that he was going to be the first author of the project, and that I would be helping him with some of the data management and maybe some of the statistical analysis of the project, but that the vast majority of the project was going to be completed by him. As time went on, he started to delegate more and more tasks to me. I was responsible for making tables, for writing abstracts, and then writing whole sections of the paper. And by the end of the project, I would say I probably ended up doing about 90% of the work for the project. And while I was happy to be included and it was a great learning experience, I did feel like with all the work that I did, that it would be warranted that I would get first author on the paper. And so I went to him with this proposal, and at first he was a little bit frustrated with me, and it seemed like there was maybe a little bit of a breakdown in communication. But I found that when we both took the time to pause and look at objectively what was happening and kind of put our egos aside, that ultimately we agreed that we could share first authorship on the paper, which ended up being, I think, a good compromise for both of us, because obviously I wasn't the one coming up with the project. I didn't do all the literature review and come up with the question for the project, but I felt like with the sheer amount of work I did, that sharing authorship was probably appropriate. And so it ended up being a nice learning moment for both of us, I think, and the outcome was pretty good.
Adam, it was very nice meeting you. Do you have any questions for me?
Of course, yeah. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to ask some questions. One question that I've kind of come up with throughout the interview trail is specifically about subspecialty exposure. So I'm curious, in your program, how early are the residents getting subspecialty exposure in anesthesiology?
Great question. The way it works currently is that the subspecialty experience starts at the PGY 3 level. There's multiple residents interested in earlier exposure to that. So the program is seriously looking into adjusting the structure of our curriculum to start doing that around mid PGY 2.
Awesome. Thank you so much. That sounds really awesome.
Any other questions?
Yeah. So obviously, I'm interested in leadership. I have a number of leadership experiences throughout my second, third, and fourth year of medical school. And so I was curious if the program has any opportunities for residents to act in leadership positions in any sort of hospital committees or anything of that nature.
Yeah, for sure. So currently, there is a resident fellow association body within the whole institution, and residents can serve as members or chairs of the different committees of that. Within the anesthesiology department, we try to involve residents in the different service lines that we have. So there is definitely plenty of opportunities for residents to be involved. And also we support our residents to get involved on the national level to go on to multiple meetings and be members of the different committees in our national associations.
That sounds amazing. Thank you so much.
Adam, again, it was very nice meeting you, and I wish you best of luck in the rest of your interviews.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate the opportunity to meet with you today.
Adam, that was a great interview. I'm sure the viewers loved the way you interacted, how natural it was. I think that's one of the major things I would take without looking into the details now of the questions. The overall vibe is someone who's confident, someone who knows what they're talking about, and very natural and nice to work with. So that's the vibe I get. And that's very important for our applicants to think about is how am I presenting myself overall? Don't be monotonous. Don't, just have a steady body language, very rigid. Just be natural, smile on your face, thank at the beginning, thank the interviewer at the beginning of the interview for being here, thank at the end. It should be just, I'm excited to be here. I'm grateful to be here. And you should try to make that fit happen early on. And we will go now into the details of each questions. But for people who are listening to this, if you'd like to get interview prep, because we will talk throughout this interview how important interviews are. I cannot emphasize how important interviews are. If you'd like to get help, because a lot of people don't think they need help. But once they start prepping for interviews with someone who is expert, they can start telling them about these nuances and issues that they have. And you can see, actually, I recorded multiple videos with applicants as well. Applicants who are not ready, they thought they're ready, but I interviewed them and I give them feedback about their performance, and I really thank their courage for showing up on the YouTube channel. But you can see that there is always room for improvement. Don't just do it with your co-resident who's applying, who also has the same issues, might not know what makes a good interview or not. Because once you get an interview, trust me, it's almost all about the interviews. There's still, of course, some factors about your scores and the other factors, but the interviews plays a huge role in you being ranked high, and you don't want to miss that. Especially now the ball is in your court, you got the interview, don't waste it. We have 80 plus advisors, IMGs, US grads like Adam, DOs. We have literally from all specialties. You get to choose who you want to work with, and if you don't like it, you literally get your money back. It's literally risk-free. Check the link in the description below, the links in the cards above, and if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to us. So let's start by talking about the tell me about yourself. Adam, I have a lot to talk about the tell me about yourself. What is your thought about that one? What went into structuring your answer?
So kind of the way I approach the tell me about yourself is it is your opportunity to kind of tell the interviewer your personal and professional trajectory. I obviously review a lot of these applications. I look at a lot of these ERAS applications, and I know people put a lot of time and energy into telling their story through these things, but the best ones, it can still be pretty difficult to figure out the trajectory that someone's taken to get to where they are applying for residency. And so I think it's really, really, really helpful to have a good narrative for how you got to where you are applying for residency, so that the interviewer knows how you got to where you are, and it helps contextualize your whole story. And so I've talked to people that do a tell me about yourself, and it's almost entirely about the specialty. It's almost entirely about all their extracurriculars or things that they're passionate about. And I'm still like, I don't actually know about how you got to where you are, or about your life up until this point. And so it's really, really helpful for me to kind of build a mental schema of who you are as an applicant when I have a good tell me about yourself that tells me your whole, like, a brief version of your whole life story.
Exactly. That's exactly how I would do it. I would say the tell me about yourself is that 1.5 to 2 minutes that you have to sell yourself to the program. Usually interviews start with that, and that can just build the whole trajectory of the interview. So you'd either be here in the eyes of the interviewer or here. So you need to present yourself in the best way possible for that specific program. Because remember, most of the other questions, you will have a very specific, why the specialty, why the program, and you have to go that route. Here, it's an open-ended question. They're literally giving you the floor to tell what you want them to hear. And Adam brought up a very good point. I see a lot of people who just talk about their personal life, or talk about their hobbies, or people who talk about why they picked the specialty. And for me, again, there are different schools of what to tell me about yourself. For me to tell me about yourself, I want to, in 1.5 to 2 minutes, understand your background, who you are, what got you here, very briefly why you got interested in the specialty. I want to hear a lot about what makes you who you are and why should we pick you, and maybe a little bit about some fun fact about you and some hobbies and interests. So you see, it's a lot, but you need to be very concise and try to get a list of multiple bullet points and change that based on the program. Because if a program is very heavy on research, you might slide the research in there and remove the community service, maybe from when you're interviewing with Harvard. When you're interviewing with a community program, maybe the research is not your top priority to include in this 1.5 to 2 minutes, and maybe talk about the community service. So you need to adjust that answer based on the program. And I want to kind of hear that story. If I don't ask a single other question to that person, I want to hear, as an interviewer, what does this applicant bring to the table from this 1.5 minutes? And, we can talk about a few pinpoints that Adam mentioned. Adam summarized their professional career, where they went to undergrad, where they went to med school, some a little bit of humor by the fact of Florida to Pennsylvania. So be careful with the humor. Don't go too far, but this was perfect touch, very light, changing slightly as an icebreaker in the beginning, decreasing the stress of the interview. Then they talked about what makes them who they are. Professionally, they're talking about involvement outside clinical, and then clinical work and sub-Is that makes them a strong applicant. So remember, a lot of people don't have time to review your CV, or sometimes they don't even get your CV for purposes of bias. So they might not know about the Nobel Prize you won and the 70 plus papers you have. So this is your opportunity to kind of provide a brief summary of you, and then the interviewer can ask, oh, tell me about this. Tell me about tennis. I love playing tennis, and this could be a whole thing you talk about during the interview. So present them with multiple things. And if you know that the interviewer has a specific interest in research, specific interest in clinical, that might be your opportunity to mention it here, so it becomes a discussion point. You want to take control of the interview, even though you're not asking the question. By mentioning these things, you need to take control of the interview. And I'm a huge advocate for including strength point in your tell me about yourself. You are selling yourself. This is a job interview. This is a very serious, high-end job interview with very well-qualified applicants. So you need to stand out. Even in the tell me about yourself, why should this program pick you? Even if you're not asked that question, you should have answered it through this or other questions in a very humble manner, not arrogant, not I'm like the best applicant in this pool. No, nothing like that. Just strength of why the program should choose you as a brief summary. Don't go into the details here, because we will talk about the details in the other questions. Now I want to jump to the next question, which is why the specialty? And you will find that the answer that Adam gave is slightly different than the prior interviews I had. Why? Because he had a different background. For people who have a very obvious interest in one specialty and then they're applying to something else, you need to answer that question. You can't have like 50 papers in ortho and apply to anesthesiology and not mention what made that change happen. What's your thought about that, Adam?
Yeah, I totally agree. That was something that I was really nervous about when I was applying to residency. I remember talking to a mentor I had who knew like my whole trajectory, how I landed on anesthesiology, and he made a point of saying, yeah, you really need to point out the fact that you made this transition, because especially in anesthesiology, you don't want your interviewer to think that you're applying anesthesiology as a backup specialty. A lot of people do that. And I mean, that's okay. People apply to specialties all the time. I have no issue with people applying to specialties, but you definitely want your interviewer to think that you're fully bought into anesthesiology. And I'm sure it's the same philosophy with other specialties that you're dual applying. You, to the best of your ability, you want to make that interviewer think that this is the specialty that you're serious about.
Exactly. You do not want the interviewer to think that you're applying to a specialty as a backup. Very important point. And another point is when you mention that, you're taking charge of it now. You're not being asked, oh, this is like a red flag on your CV, and try to tell me why it's like that. I'm like taking accountability of it and I'm explaining to them. And he brought this whole thing as a full circle, talking about 3 specialties and combining them in one. It was a great answer. It was a really good answer. And another always very important point when it comes to expressing interest in the specialty, it comes from experiences. I've seen, and I'm sure you've seen the same, Adam, is that people tell me a list of anesthesiology, you get to take care of complex patients, you know, taking care of patients in their most vulnerable times, and like variety of pathologies and medical conditions. They have kind of a list ChatGPT generated, or maybe just from a blog that preaches the choir about the specialty. They already know these things. They want to hear from your experiences. From your experiences in anesthesiology, what made you interested in that? In IM, what made you interested in IM? And Adam brought it from his own experiences doing rotation. This is real. This is not just some hypothetical situation that he thinks that he's interested in anesthesiology. He actually did rotations and liked the specialty. That kind of gives the answer its power, is that this is from my own experiences. So you had a different story where you have like only one specialty throughout your whole career, or you had this situation where you started with one specialty and then you switched. Make sure when you express interest in the specialty, make sure you bring it from your own experiences. Now, let's talk about why the program. You brought very important points. You brought the away rotation, probably the most powerful thing you can say to a program. I've done an away rotation and start bringing from these experiences. You brought the family ties, very important. Adam, a lot of IMGs don't know that this is actually a very good thing to mention. And you talked about the clinical strength of the program. Can you tell us what goes into your mind when expressing interest in the program, which could be, you need to might sprinkle it throughout the interview if you're not asked about this question specifically, because you want to identify fit with the program. You want to tell them, I know what you stand for, and I'm a good fit with that.
Yeah, I totally agree with what you're saying. I've talked to a number of different program directors about this, specifically in anesthesiology. They care a lot about you having a support system in the area. A lot of anesthesiology programs are going to be very strong. You're going to get very good training. Doesn't even apply to just anesthesiology. A lot of training programs are going to be very, very good. They're going to make you a very well-trained doctor. If you can personally tie yourself to that program, whether that be through, I've personally experienced the culture of the program and I love it, or I have family members that will support me in the area. This is what program directors want to hear and what they care about, because when it comes time to make the rank list and there's applicant 1 and applicant 2 and they have the same exact application profile, but applicant 2's family lives down the street from the hospital, when it comes time for a tiebreaker, the person with family in the area is probably going to get the tiebreaker.
Exactly.
And so, yeah.
Exactly. And, people don't know that programs want people to be happy, because they know when they're happy, they're better residents, and having that social support definitely makes that happen. Also, I forgot to mention, Adam mentioned in his Tell Me About Yourself, the couples match idea. And this is a question I get asked a lot, Adam, especially from IMGs. Should I mention that I'm couple matching, or will that hurt me? I think it's the opposite. It actually helps you because, if you have an interview from somewhere and your partner does not, they might get the interview based on the fact that you got one, because they also want to keep people together. Do you have any other thoughts about that, Adam?
I totally agree with it. Every single program that I talked to about the fact that I'm couples matching, they immediately asked, "Oh, does your fiance have an interview with their program?" And they even said, "Oh, we'll reach out to other programs in the city for you that aren't even at the same institution." And so in anesthesiology specifically, there's 15 signals. You hope to get all 15 interviews from those 15 signals. But when I applied, I actually got 9 additional interviews from programs that my fiance at the time interviewed at. And I didn't actually signal that program, but I emailed them and said, "Hey, my fiance is interviewing at your internal medicine program, and I'd love to interview for your anesthesiology program." And I got an interview that way.
Yes.
And it immediately, even on interview day, people said, "Oh, I heard that your fiance interviewed with us." So you have a built-in icebreaker too, for whatever that's worth. And it really, really, really helps the application, I think.
Exactly. And I have a video actually about that, about couples match. I interviewed 2 couples who couple matched, and they both matched at the same program, and they agree with everything you said. For our viewers, if you're interested in getting, again, access to our 200 plus residency interview questions that actually Adam also contributed to this year, sample answers to common residency interview questions, interview prep guide, multiple tutorials, they're fully free. You just need to sign up, put your email, and they will come to your inbox, and you can sign up to them by clicking on the link in the description below or the link in the card above. And if you need help one-on-one with the residency interview prep experts, 100% money back guarantee, you'll also see the links in the description of this video. Now, let's go to the next question we asked about, which is why you? Not always you get asked that question, but it's a very important question because these points that are in the why you should be included somewhere in your interview, because you will see that every question could be an opportunity to tell about your strength.